Thank you, Ted. So I'm going to take you through, I've got this talk set up as sort of the pros and the cons of metal on metal. My own personal practice is about 85% to 90% is actually polyethylene, 10% range metal, and about 5% is ceramic. That's what I actually do in my own practice. So metal on metal, there's implants from multiple manufacturers. They come in both iterations, as you know, as total hips and resurfacing. And, you know, I guess the question is why? Well, it's got wonderful and excellent wear properties. I mean, this is an old ring prosthesis. You might have seen some of these done. And this was removed for aseptic loosening, but not really so much for wear, and would be a very poorly designed metal on metal. It's 50 to 100 times lower wear rate in the lab, but more importantly, because we've all been fooled by the lab before, is these retrieval studies are showing the same thing. And you're in that 25 to 50% or 50 times lower wear rate than standard conventional polyethylene. The clinical results of current implants, there's multiple published series of implants available currently with equivalent results to metal on poly. What are some of the other advantages? Well, osteolysis is rare. This is the first metal that I did in my own practice. It's out 12 years now, and I think that's a very quiet-looking hip, much quieter than the polyethylene that I was using back in the mid-1990s. You can get squeaking with metal on metal. The difference is it's fairly long. This is a ceramic on ceramic, and they can squeak. And that's not too subtle. And that patient actually worked. I got to move that video ahead. I can't listen to it anymore. But that patient actually worked in a casino dealing cards, and every time she dealt cards, it went pop, pop, creak, creak. And apparently that's bad if you're a gambler. Other advantages, there's no mechanical failure. I mean, these things don't break. They don't break like polyethylene. They don't break like ceramic. So another advantage to the metal on metal. It allows the use of large heads, and I think this is important, whether it be 36, 38, depending on the company, or if you're so inclined to couple it with a monoblock shell, you can use very large heads. And I think the advantage much beyond 36, 38, or 40 I don't believe is there, but up to that point there's an advantage with range of motion, improved stability, improved lower wear rates, and no liner fractures as you would see with polyethylene as you get into the larger sizes. Is instability a clinical issue? Well, everybody says their instability rate is less than 1%, but in point of fact, in an excellent publication, it was about 4% in a Medicare-based patient population prior to the advent of using larger heads. So it isn't really the less than 1% in big databases. The question remains, will head size improve that? In an excellent registry database, it does show a direct correlation, increasing stability, decreased revision burden for instability with larger heads. So let's now talk about some of the disadvantages, and they're listed, and I'll go through them one by one. What about metal ions? Well, there's some myths and some facts out there. Only patients with metal on metal bearings have measurable ions. In point of fact, all of us in this room have measurable cobalt and chromium levels. It's normal to have some of these circulating. All metal implants produce similar metal ion elevation. That's wrong. There's variation in the ion that's produced, the production between the different bearings. Elevated metal ions lead to increased cancer risk. That's theoretical. There's no clinical correlation to date, but I'll touch on it for a moment. Metal bearings should not be used in women of childbearing age. Well, the placenta is a partial barrier, but not complete to ions. So about 60% of the ions will cross the placenta. So my own personal thing is I don't use them in women of childbearing age. I've done multiple studies. The bottom line here, those box plots show measurably elevated ions out to 5 years. We've now measured them out to 10 years, and they remain elevated. So the thought that they peak early and they start to peter isn't exactly accurate. They might go down a little bit, but they're persistent for life, basically. If you get metal on metal, you have elevated ions. I will say something else. When you start to compare series, it's very important that you understand that I can demonstrate a doubling of metal ions today on the same patient at the same day, at the same moment of collection, simply by reporting erythrocytes versus whole blood versus serum. So you need to be careful when you're comparing different series that they've measured the ions in the same way. It's like using two different ways to measure polyethylene wear. So what about the systemic effects of the metal ions? Is there a risk to cancer? This paper is quoted a lot, but there's only 579 McKee-Ferrars in this paper, and it showed that the annual incidence of all-site cancer followed what you would expect. But I challenge that will we ever know? Because to adequately power something, a rare outcome, you need about 25,000 patients. So small series are not going to be able to answer that question. You need large databases like a registry. Metal hypersensitivity is a painful total hit with no x-ray findings, no diagnostic test, no screening test. It's thought to be a diagnosis of exclusion. It's thought to be rare, but the actual incidence of hypersensitivity, I think, is yet to be determined and will be variable. All metal and metal will not have the same hypersensitivity reaction. I will draw your attention to 2 recent publications that described aseptic loosening and possible hypersensitivity immune response in a metal-on-metal system. But look at that system. It was a threaded shell and a metal poly sandwich. I don't think most of us would use that exact construct. And if you look at the complications they were quoting with infections and pain and loose cups, loose stems, that's not a bearing issue. That's a technique issue. It's a design issue, but not a bearing issue. If you look at the variability that's out there in metal-on-metal, with metallurgy being different, geometries being different, designs being different, there's a lot of things going on at the same time. And so I would challenge the premise that all metal and metal should be lumped together, just like all ceramics shouldn't be and all poly shouldn't be. The pros and the cons are implant specific, not generalizable all the time to the entire bearing. Is metal hypersensitivity linked to osteolysis and loosening? At present, there's no established cause and effect. There's no established gold standard for diagnosing metal hypersensitivity. And there are histological findings that I think most of us are familiar with that one can find. The challenge for us as clinicians is that there's really no way that I can reliably screen for these patients to know who is at 1 in 2 or 3 or 400 that might indeed get hypersensitivity. There's no screening test for it. Pseudotumors is a very recently described phenomenon. It's about 1% in this series of David Murray's. And these were all resurfacings, and it was all women. And they presented with a whole constellation of variable symptoms. And it's a concern that David's brought forward, and I think others are continuing to study it. I think in conclusion, if you're going to do a metal-on-metal, it makes sense to use a larger diameter head because it'll improve your ability to get impingement-free range of motion. You're not going to avoid impingement, but it'll improve it to a certain point, at least up to about a 36 to 40. You have no availability of lipped or offset liners, as you know. As well, cup abduction is a bad deal for any bearing. Polyethylene, ceramics, and metals. It's not unique to just the hard-on-hard. It's bad for polyethylene. I avoid metal-on-metal in patients that have renal dysfunction, women of childbearing age, and those that complain of a known allergy or hypersensitivity. There's no cross-reactivity, but by the same token, if they got a complication and they already told you they were allergic to costume jewelry, you wouldn't look too smart. So in summary, like all bearings, there are pros and cons. I think there still are pros out there that make it a viable alternative. But like all bearings, when a complication is described, we need to understand that complication and then try and move forward with the science rather than discarding an entire bearing or an entire class of devices. Thank you.